So we're going to start weather with severe weather. Now, since we're not in the classroom, we can't do a bell ringer like this where you're going to turn to the person next to you. But if your parents are around, or if you got a brother and sister, or if you just want to do this yourself on the top of your notes, and hey guys, you are going to be taking your own notes this time. So when you send me your notes, you're going to send me a picture of your own notes. You're basically going to ask, hey, if you're going to prepare for a hurricane, you know when's coming to North Carolina, what would you need to do? What were some of the things that you and your family need to get together? What type of plans do you need to have? So you're not what they call a Katrina victim, because a lot of folks with Hurricane Katrina weren't prepped. They didn't take things seriously. So pause the video and go ahead and do it. And I love this one. Look at that lightning. I am not a huge fan of lightning in the sense that it scares the crap out of me, but it is absolutely beautiful. And look at this. And there are people that actually make a living taking pictures of this. So our first type of storm is going to be thunderstorms. And they are small, intense weather systems. They have heavy wind, heavy rain, lots of lightning and thunder, and they occur usually along cold fronts. Generally, you need two big conditions for them to go. You need warm, moist air near the surface and an unstable atmosphere. And generally, when you have warm, moist air near the surface, you're going to get an unstable atmosphere because that warm, moist air is going to rise really fast, and that's going to kind of start the conditions for an unstable atmosphere. So when that warm, moist air rising, it gets to a point, something called dew point, which we'll talk about when we go through the weather material. You're going to get something called cumulus clouds. And cumulus clouds, unto themselves, those are the big kind of like marshmallow looking clouds, the fluffy clouds. They're not a big deal unto themselves, but they can actually turn into something called cumulonimbus clouds, which are your thunderstorm clouds. And that's when they get bigger and taller and darker at the bottoms. And that's when they start to get a little scary. And remember, once again, you can stop this at any point so you can take notes, because I know I'm going to kind of go through this a little fast. Whoops. All right, so with thunderstorms, you do get lightning, and that's an electric discharge that occurs between a positively charged area and a negatively charged area. That can be between two clouds, within the same cloud, or between the ground and the cloud. And when lightning strikes, energy is released and transferred to the air, and it causes that air to expand really fast and send out sound waves, and that's the thunder you hear. So some kind of information for you and your family. Just so you know, there's no place safe outside during a thunderstorm, and it kills more people annually than tornadoes or hurricanes. Surprise, surprise. And if you hear thunder, you are likely within striking distance of a storm. So guys, if you belong to a pool at your apartment, or you are one of those folks that, belong to a swim club, please, when the lifeguard or your pool manager says get out because they heard thunder, get out. Don't argue with them. It doesn't mean the sky doesn't have to be dark. You don't have to have major clouds. As long as you can hear thunder, that lightning can strike. It can strike over miles. And it has happened, and they want the best for you. So when they say get out, get out. I've been that manager before, and they're like, I didn't hear it. Well, your head was in the water. Of course you didn't hear it. And it was really low. But if I can hear it, there is a chance for it can strike. If you're outdoors, try to get to a building inside. If you can't get into a building, try to get into a metal vehicle. Stay away from isolated tall objects because it's going to go directly to that tall object. Don't go under a tree. So many people have gotten themselves killed by going underneath a tree. If you're indoors, stay away from any equipment that's connected to electrical power. like computers or appliances. Avoid contact with water or plumbing. In other words, don't take that shower while there's a thunderstorm going on. And if you have a corded phone in your house, and I know a lot of guys you don't, but if you have a corded phone, stay off of it, please. Stay away from windows and doors, and stay inside for about 30 minutes after the last rumble. So you can see here where you see a lot of it, where you get a lot of hits. And you do get a lot of hits around the East Coast, like crazy it is. Look at that. Florida, big time. So odds of becoming a lightning victim, they're not huge, but better than a lot of things out there. If you're going to live 80 years, you got 1 in 3,000 chance, which is actually bigger than actually winning the lottery. Odds that you're going to be affected by someone struck by lightning, 1 in 300. So the odds aren't huge, but they're much better than you would think. And I know when I was living in Cary, I heard of several people in the last 10 years that got struck, including like in front of like the old Navy store in Cary. This is one of the things that can occur during lightning strikes. You get almost like these snowflake patterns in your skin, which is where the discharge is actually traveling through your skin. And there are a lot of problems once you get struck with lightning. If you survive it, you will have things like headaches, possibility of depression, chronic pain, self-isolation, personality changes, difficulties with conversations. If you really think about it, you can have issues with arthritis, issues with your heart. You have a huge electrical current that is traveling through your body, and it's going to disrupt other electrical currents. Your heart runs on electricity. Your brain basically runs on electricity. It's going to cause fluids to expand because they can warm up. So think about your joints. With the fluid in your joints, they're going to expand. So you're going to have all sorts of fun and exciting possible problems once you actually survive and seem to be getting physically better. Here's the fatalities for the last, about 30 years or so, 40 years? 40 years. You can see we're up there. I bet you can see who's bigger than us. Look at Florida, my goodness. And probably a lot of it is, being on lakes, being on beaches or very outdoors type of a group in the South. So you're going to have a lot of issues with that. All right, so in your notes here, once again, we don't have a vocab quiz, yay, but tell me, how do you think meteorologists used to pick out the names for hurricanes? Hold your video, and I'm going to tell you at the end of the hurricane section. Well, I guess I'm not. All right, so if you want to know 2020, what the 2020 hurricane names are, the first one is going to be Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, Dahlia, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Laura, Marka, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. All right, so I'll tell you now. They used to actually use their girlfriends' or wives' names when they picked out hurricane names. And then I guess about a decade or so ago, they said, oh, we just can't use girls' names. We're going to have to bring some guys in. And now there's a committee that gets together, and they decide what the names are going to be for the next couple of years. And if there is a massive hurricane that does monster amounts of damage and death, they actually retire that name. All right, so hurricanes are a large rotating tropical weather system that has wind speeds of at least, of 120 kilometers an hour. They're the most powerful storms on Earth. In the Western Pacific, they are called typhoons. In the Indian Ocean, they're cyclones. And generally, they start in warm areas. You got to have warm tropical waters. You've got to have that because that is the beginning of the fuel for the hurricane. It is the beginning of having an unstable atmosphere, which is going to get those thunderstorms, which is also the beginning of a hurricane. All right, we got our how a hurricane forms. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Once again, feel free to stop the video so you can get your steps down. And keep in mind, this is stuff here. The thunderstorms, the hurricanes, the tornadoes after this are all things that affect us in North Carolina. So some basic stuff for you on hurricanes. The center of the hurricane is called the eye. It's usually kind of calm in the eye. When you start to around the wall of the eye, that's when you get the greatest winds, massive precipitation. The outer bands, which you hear a lot about in the Raleigh area, because it's usually the outer bands that affect us in Raleigh. You'll still have some winds, nothing like you're going to have towards the center of the hurricane, and you get lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of rain. And you also have the possibility of tornadoes sprouting from there. So that's kind of what we tend to get here in Raleigh. We'll get some wind gusts that can take down our pine trees because the ground that gets so soaked, and because of the root system, the pine trees, they go down pretty quickly. You get tons and tons of rain, lots of flooding, and a small kind of wussy tornado every once in a while. We have to have a scale to describe the strength of a hurricane, and it's a little misleading because it talks about winds mainly. And you can actually have a hurricane that's a 2, which is, between a ranking of 1 and 5. That seems like not the big deal. But if you have a 2 and it sits over an area for a long period of time and they get tons and tons of rain and there's a big storm surge, you can have more problems with that hurricane than you can have one that is necessarily it's a 4, because you're going to have massive amounts of flooding. So there are a lot of times people will be with a 2 and they don't take all the precautions because they think it's not going to be anything, and it turns out to be a heck of a lot because of all the flooding issues. Storm surge happens when water is pushed towards the shore due to atmospheric pressure changes and wind moving around the storm. And if you ever go to the beach and you'll see like poles, you'll see lines, and they'll have like numbers like 12 feet, 15 feet. Those were storm surges that actually have reached into those areas and have gone up that high in the area. So if you ever go down there and you take a look at some of that stuff, I think you'll find it kind of interesting, because you never realized that water could go up that high and that deep in those areas due to storm surge. Looking at bad storms, Katrina was bad. But the one that happened in 1928 in Florida was worse. Over 2,500 victims. And probably because there was really no warning, or not much of one. Katrina had lots of warning, massive amounts of warning, and they still had too many. You can see a bunch of the others here where they had. A lot of them are in the Florida area. Galveston was a bad one in 1915. There's been a couple of books written about that one. Some things to do before it. Place valuables and personal papers in a waterproof container, which is very important, because if you need to get help from the government, they always want that information. You need to have it. And I can tell you from personal experience, getting replacements for that information is a pain in the neck. And it's even worse if the area that you're living in is shut down, computers and all that, getting that information. So you want to have the important documents and something waterproof so you can grab and go. Have a grab and go kit for yourself. Make sure you have plenty of water, a can opener that's not electric, canned foods for at least 3 days, water for 3 days, stuff your pets for 3 days, your medications, an evacuation plan just in case you guys are not all in the same place. Fill that gas tank completely up in all of your cars, because gas stations, when electricity goes out, they don't fill up things up. Set your refrigerator to the coldest settings and don't open it up a whole lot so that you can keep things cold, because stuff will survive in there for a couple of days if you don't open it a whole lot. And anything that is not secured outside is going to blow away, and also can be a weapon as it flies around and hits your house. So make sure all that stuff is brought into the inside. Here's one here. I believe this is Katrina. You can see how massive they get. And right here, some of the damage, some craziness. Look at this. Look at that truck in the swimming pool. That's crazy. You can see the beach houses. You can see the palm trees look like boats. It's just insane. And we're going to stop here and do tornadoes in a separate section.